everybody, and welcome to another episode of the PokerNews Podcast. It is an absolute mother freaking miracle that this podcast is happening right now. I recently returned to the land of having power and water only maybe 5 hours ago. And I just want everyone to take a moment and just remind yourself how good we have it. You know, flushing the toilet, who knew? Like what? Just so you guys know, if you have to go take snow from outside and melt it to flush your toilet, it takes like 20 minutes. So just wherever you are, take a moment to appreciate the little things in this life.
Well, God bless the great state of Texas. But with that said, Texas is an absolute disaster. So I'm happy that you have some power back in your life.
Dude, it has been such a nightmare. Literally people are dying. People are dying of hypothermia, fires. I'm literally watching the news this morning and they're just talking about, people's inside of their houses is 25 degrees. We thank the good Lord have a fireplace, and that was very helpful, but people are literally like pulling their furniture apart and burning their furniture in the fireplace because they're so cold. Hopefully for everyone out there listening to this, if you are listening, I'm assuming you have power, or if you don't, just know that we are just praying for you and praying for all the people in Texas. Mm-hmm. I, for one, am 100%. But you know, the show must go on. The PokerNews Podcast stops for no one. And Chad's in Wisconsin, so he thinks this is ridiculous. But Chad's in Wisconsin. I grew up in Colorado. I get it. But you have an infrastructure and a community that's built to sustain. You guys eat cheese curds all year so that when this kind of stuff goes down, you're ready for it.
I certainly feel bad for what you and others are going through down there. But, 25 degrees right now sounds like no jacket weather for us up here. It's been hovering below zero for the past week. It's definitely been chilly, but like you said, we're built for it up here. We have that infrastructure in place. Texas, you don't, and you're seeing kind of obviously the side effects for that. And we've been in touch off the air quite a bit with you, Sarah. And yeah, I've certainly felt for you. You've been going through some stuff that cannot be fun.
Dude, there was a point yesterday where I almost cried. I was like, that's it. There was like a waterfall coming out of our front yard. Our neighbors called. And I was like, oh, that's why we don't have water. Okay, great, perfect. And then just my daughter went to the emergency room on Friday. And so I just don't want her to be sick anymore. And It's freezing cold. We're literally sleeping with each other by the fireplace. She's losing. It's been a lot. And
then Jeff had a windstorm tornado in Las Vegas last week or something. I seen all these pictures of a crazy windstorm that swept through.
It did. It got super, super, super windy. But I think everything was fine. No real damage or anything. It was 46 degrees today. I wore a sweater, a coat, a hoodie, and gloves. So I cannot imagine what both of you have to go through. And
the wind in Vegas though is crazy. I can remember sometimes from my apartment, watching, umbrellas and chairs and things just blow down the street. When things get going in Vegas, it gets pretty serious. It's the desert, dude. Things are not made to live there. No one's made to live there. All right. Well, we've got a great show for you guys. Of course, because of all of this chaos, I've had to postpone the Daniel Negreanu interview over and over, and he has graciously agreed to do it tonight. So I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be about yet, but I will say that I do anticipate that it's going to be very juicy. I've been watching and listening to a lot of the content from Daniel over the course of the last couple of weeks, and I've got lots of good questions. I'm sure you guys do too. So you guys will clearly want to stay tuned for the Daniel Negreanu portion of the show. We also have Daiva Byrne. We're going to be doing an interview with her. I have a feeling we're probably going to end up putting that into next week's podcast, just by virtue of all of the chaos and things going on. But that is a story in and of itself, I guess. Chad, listen, Daiva's the newest member of Team GGPoker, and it does seem like, my guess is because of all of the backlash having to do with Dan Bilzerian, there was some sort of a, upper management meeting where they said, hey, we've got to get some kind of femme person on the team immediately. And they were just scrolling through who are the uber femme poker players. And maybe this is how this whole thing happened. Jeff, Chad, thoughts?
I think it's probably a fairly apt guess there to balance the range a little bit. so to speak. And Daiva is the founder of Fantastic Ladies in Poker, FLIP as the acronym. And, they are for the world's foremost female-focused player community. So if you want to bring somebody in to kind of balance that out, if you will, and advocate for women in poker, that's certainly a solid selection to bring onto your team. And, GGPoker is one of the few movers and shakers, if you will, in bringing on ambassadors. Right now, we've seen poker stars really pull back from that model. Party poker is still there, of course, but GG really seems to be the one that is making the most headlines these days. And like you said, with Dan Bilzerian, it was certainly very polarizing. Some people loved it, some people hated it. There was some drama and controversy surrounding it. Bringing on Daiva Byrne, bringing on a group like Flip is hard to argue with. It seems like there's only upside here.
And I think we'll see GG bring on more women as members of their team or members of their squad in the next couple months, because right now on their team they have Dan Bilzerian, they have Negreanu, they have Elke, they have Fedor, Felipe Ramos, and on their squad, which is mostly their streamers, they have Kevin Martin and Easter Dams and Egyptian and Kakiti and Jektis and Jay Nandes. So it's pretty clear what they are lacking and what they need. So I think this is kind of just the beginning for GG.
Which again goes back to, I don't care what anyone says, it's great to be a woman in poker because you have to balance it out somehow. But even if, there's only 4% of the fields, or maybe even let's say 10% if we're looking at online, you still have to have some women representing your brand. And if you don't, you get in trouble. So I think actually for women, it's extra bonus. Having the old vagine can work out big time in your favor if you are in the poker industry. Although I would say for Daiva, she's probably like jumping into a mess of things, which our colleague Jason will, I'm sure, get into, because all of the female crew, I have to imagine, are coming hard for her for joining a team that Dan Bilzerian's on. So you can't win for losing in this, unless you are the angry Polak, which I have to say, Veronica Brill, we noticed last week maybe, got named the new host, or it was maybe released on purpose or on accident, I don't know, by our boy Brent Hanks. And she's going to be the new host of Poker After Dark. I really did a deep dive after this into sort of her socials. And I was actually trying to find hosting stuff from her just so I could see, I'm always looking for new talent to poach. And I didn't see a lot of that, but I did just go deep into her socials and some of the interviews that she's done on her own YouTube channel. And I really like her. I was like, dude, I don't know. I guess maybe I mostly only knew her because of the Mike Postle stuff, but she seems really clever and really, I feel like I would enjoy, listen, if you're listening, Veronica, if you want to grab a drink sometime, I'll be your Huckleberry.
I think she's great. I think she's perfect for the role. She reminds me a lot of you, Sarah. I'm not just saying that because you're here, but there's something about the on-camera presence where you make the person that you are interviewing comfortable, where it doesn't feel like a scripted show where you're just reading off your list of questions. You guys are kind of just flowing in conversation. And that's what I think is so great about Veronica. They just finished shooting what will be the new season of Poker After Dark. So they were in studio the last 5 days or so, heard glowing reviews about Veronica. And listen, in the future, it will be more, she sits at a bar with a player and they do have a cocktail. Today, with all the COVID concerns, they got to sit far apart. Veronica's got to wear the mask, et cetera, et cetera. But I still at least heard that it went really well. So I'm excited to see these episodes. And I think that she'll be great in that kind of role.
Well, we've got still more, as we are continuing in the world of the COVID, we have more humongous, sick, crazy, amazing tournaments going down online. The Millions online just recently rolled out a couple of gigantic high roller titles. Chad, do you want to take this bad boy?
Yeah, let me preface it by recapping one from Sunday. Timothy Adams was playing on GGPoker. The High Rollers Blade ended up winning that for almost $47,000. So it didn't take long for him to follow that up with a win in the Party Poker Millions. He took down, let's see, it was event number 4, which is a 6-max High Roller Turbo event, $5,200 buy-in. He navigated a pretty tough field and defeated Elio Fox Heads Up to win this one for almost $79,000. And so that is quite the streak that Tim Adams is on here in 2021. Not just those two events, but I recall, not off the top of my head what events they were, but I know he's won several other online events thus far in 2021. Also winning a millions title was, and I'm going to butcher this name, Yuri Dzivelevski. Dzivelevski, maybe.
I think you got it.
It's a Brazilian name. I do apologize. He beat Justin Bonomo heads up to win the Six Max High Roller event number 3 for $185,000. And Justin Bonomo finishing runner up there for $113,000. He actually finished 4th in the other one I just talked about in event number 4, the other Six Max High Roller Turbo. Finished 4th there for $25,000. So Justin Bonomo, another player who has been on quite the tear online recently.
Yeah, and you said it, that final table that Adams won, that is sick. Elliot Fox in 2nd, Jake Schindler in 3rd, Bonomo,
Which,
like
was
you said,
he
in
like
4th.
trying to go incognito? I was like, Jacob Carl Schindler from the Netherlands.
That's what they list him as on Party Poker. Yeah. As you know, he's Dutch, of course.
Yeah.
Mike Watson, Steven Chidwick has made a couple final tables of late. The stars are certainly out for the millions.
Well, there is actually still some live poker going on, and we will get to that story in just one second. But before we do, we just want to give a shout out to our homies at GGPoker.
GGPoker continues to revolutionize online poker with exclusive new games and features that set it apart from the opposition. Play at neck-breaking speed on the site's exciting spin and gold jackpot sit and go events and win big, or grind it out in the weekly $300,000 guaranteed GG Masters. You guys will not want to miss out on the GGPoker bonuses. You can get either $100 in cash and free tickets, or 100% match bonus up to a maximum of $600. You guys definitely do not want to miss out on their match deposit bonus. You can check that out on PokerNews.com. Be sure to search GGPoker bonus on PokerNews.com.
All right. Hey, Sarah, I got a quick question before we get into all these live tournaments. We've talked about it in the past episodes. What's the deal with your BBO poker table? They never sent it to me. I know we were worried about that for a little while, but I never got it. So
yeah, I was sweating that pretty hard actually. Okay, so because of all of the crazy chaos and all of the things, like basically nothing is happening in my sector, I do not have it yet, and I am super depressed because I already had this weekend planned a big event for all of my homies to come over and play with me. But the good news is, if you are listening right now and you're interested in jumping into this Kickstarter, you can get the BBO Origins gaming table, which is also, it can convert to a dining table. It has a dining table surface, which I might add is water resistant. So is the playing surface. It has cup holders. It has little, component organizers for all of your different games. It has basically everything your heart desires if you are into like a good looking table, but also you like to play games and eat. Both things. You can do both things. Normally $2,300. For the next 2 days, you can still get it for $14.99 with free shipping. Plus there's all these different bonuses unlocked because of how deep we've gotten into this Kickstarter and how much they've managed to raise on the Kickstarter. So the ultimate goal, let me see exactly where we are, is to get, if we get to $1 million, every backer gets $90 in free add-ons. I'm so, my head is exploding with how close we are getting. Okay, let's see. Load it up. The internet's like a little slow. Come on, guys.
Well, I saw you tweet about it, so I actually clicked the link to check it out, and I got to admit, it is a pretty sweet table. I'm not getting a free one. I'm not getting paid to say that. I was just like, I'm a gamer a little bit, play a lot of board games, play some tabletop games, and I thought, damn, it looks pretty sweet. It reminded me of kind of like a hybrid pool poker table, but designed and meant for gaming. It's pretty impressive.
I'm telling you guys, I have been obsessed ever since the get. I don't know how far we are. Maybe they actually got there or something. For whatever reason, it's not opening to how far we are into it, but it doesn't matter because by the time you guys listen to it, it will already have passed that number. But last time I checked, we were above 800,000. So I really suggest you guys you can Google Kickstarter Origins table and you can find the link there. Otherwise, it's the Origins Exquisite and Functional Board Game Table on Kickstarter. We'll put a link, of course, in the description and also in the video. But I am super, super excited, and I will share with you guys more if you follow me on my socials at Auntie Chardonnay as I get it. And also, I've been posting stuff on the Poker News. Now, let's talk a little bit about live poker. I've actually had a couple of gigs and jobs open up recently, and I'm just wondering, you know, is the world coming back maybe? Are we kind of getting there? I really hope so. I'm all for it. Let's just move on with our lives. And the WSOP, what am I saying? The Poker News is going to report Party Poker at PK. What? You guys, where is there a live tournament on here?
Well, yes, there are a couple of onlines and a couple lives. Chad, go ahead.
Yeah, let me break it down for you. It's a good mix. So we are this weekend going to start reporting the Party Poker US Network online series. It's a PKO series for players in New Jersey. We're also going to start doing updates on the Poker Stars MI Coupe, the Michigan online championships of poker. And I'm very excited about that. Literally just got that email about 20 minutes before we started recording this show. So be the first major online tournament in Michigan. We will be doing some updates. It's going to be very exciting.
Is that going to be you, Chad, making the quick trip?
No, we don't have to be there for it. I did contemplate traveling up to maybe play it on the Upper Peninsula, but don't think that's going to happen. It might still, but we'll have to wait and see. In the live realm, as Sarah was mentioning, there are some events coming back, at least in the United States, which was pretty exciting. We have coming up in March 3 big events, actually. The Wynn Spring Classic is going to be taking place out there in Vegas. They're having a pair of $1 million guaranteed tournaments along with their regular slate of 16 different tournaments. It's going to be big. There's an article up on Poker News. We're going to be doing live updates from the $3,500 buy-in, $1 million guaranteed championship, March 12th through the 15th. And then we will be doing the weekend of March 26th to the 28th. So the end of the month, we're going to be doing 2 events at once for the first time since 2019, I think. We got the Best Bet Jacksonville Spring Series. They have a $2,500 main event, and we're also going to do the MSPT $1,100 main event at Riverside Casino in Iowa, their first stop there. And they're also going to have another regional event coming up in March at the Grand Falls, also in Iowa. And so, yeah, slowly but surely, we're seeing more and more live events come back. We're seeing the kind of regions where this is going to take place, right? So we know Florida is well prepared for events at this point in time between the Hard Rock and Best Bet Jacksonville, Vegas between the Venetian, which will be hosting the WPT Venetian here in early March as well. And the Wynn have things going. Bally's has a series going right now. And then we're seeing certain spots throughout the Midwest, like Iowa, South Dakota, down in Texas right now. There have been a few events. So, yeah, fingers crossed as the vaccine starts to take effect and more people are getting vaccinated. We're going to see some more live events coming. I had seen that the president said that hopefully every American who wants to be vaccinated will be vaccinated by the end of July, which certainly sounds like good news to me when it comes to the possibility of more live poker, when it comes to the possibility of maybe a World Series of poker at some point in 2021.
And I think what's important to note here in Vegas for the next couple of months, you know, all of these casinos have been so restricted by these capacity limits, and they were stuck at 25%. So you just cannot fit a decent amount of poker tables in a room like the Venetian poker room. A couple of days ago, that changed. That moved to 35%, with the news in the future that on March 15th, that will raise again to 50%. So you'll see more and more players, because the Venetian won't be so restricted and have to deal with alternates. Same can be said for the Wynn. So the Vegas poker scene, I think, in March will be lively, especially with more and more people coming in town for March Madness. That I think it's going to blow up. I think the Wynn, while bold in setting those $1 million guarantees, I think they're going to hit them, and I think the Vegas poker tournament scene is just going to crush over these next couple months.
And I'm curious on what grounds this has changed. This is literally just a real actual question, right? Because most people have not had access to get vaccinated, right? So even if we're just saying it's from the vaccine, we have to admit like it's actually not from that. So where have we switched to? And I don't care. I think hell yeah, do it. If you want to go like play poker, go for it. But I just think it's interesting. Like, why? What's changed?
Well, I think part of it has to be that numbers are down. I mean, I'm looking now, they're down 43% in the last 2 weeks, just as far as new cases, down 30%, just as far as deaths are concerned. Now, Clark County, Nevada, Vegas is still considered extremely high risk. I don't know what scale, who uses what scale and what that necessarily means. I don't know. I kind of shrug. The vaccine is getting more and more into play. Maybe 5% of America has been vaccinated, maybe 10 to 15% of their first dose already. I don't particularly
and they're all like
understand.
90 and don't go gamble anyways.
Well, I don't know, Sarah. You know, you've seen some older degens at the casino who, when the place opens up for them, when they get vaccinated, they'll be here. They'll
interesting,
be firing off.
Yep. If you're down like 30 or 43% in cases, but like maybe 5%, I don't know. These things don't add up to me. I'm just saying things seem a little bit weird, but I'm all for it. I'm just like, let's move on with our lives. I'm really excited to see that happen. However that has to happen, I don't really care. But I didn't know if there was some sort of something like going on in Vegas or in casinos, or they figured something out or some way. Well, I know we've been talking to something Daniel mentioned in one of his interviews is that he would like to play a lot more heads up poker, and he would like to do it live, which makes all the sense in the world. But of course, he said, until he gets vaccinated, he doesn't feel comfortable and doesn't want to do that. Clearly, we're moving in that direction either way, but would he play against Phil Hellmuth, who was maybe talking a little shit on some commentary, or I don't know. I'm sure Jeff, I didn't actually hear what Phil said, but I did see the aftermath on Twitter.
Well, Sarah, I'm sure you're saving the episodes of Brent Hanks's and I's new show, No Gamble, No Future, just so you can kind of binge watch those. So it makes sense. We had Phil Hellmuth on last week, and he did talk a little bit of shit about Daniel Negreanu. He said, I don't think Daniel played well, but he also said he didn't watch any of the match, so that's kind of hard to align. But he says that Daniel should not have countered Doug's GTO approach with a GTO approach of himself. He should have done less GTO and more Daniel, whatever that means. Negreanu says, all right, but let's go. Let's go to war. Let's do this. And so we've talked about this before on the show. Phil Hellmuth, the defending champion of High Stakes Duel, beating Antonio Esfandiari not once, not twice, but 3 times in their final match for $400,000. And then on yesterday's show, Brent Hanks, like he's prone to do, just kind of blurted it out that Phil Hellmuth and Daniel Negreanu have agreed to kick off season 2 of High Stakes Duel. That will most likely start with a $50,000 match. It will be a heads up, sit and go tournament, just like it was with Hellmuth versus Esfandiari. It will not be like this Doug Polk challenge where it's 25,000 hands of high stakes cash. It'll just be Negreanu versus Hellmuth at the Poker Go studio when either they get vaccinated or when they're comfortable enough to be there. I think they'll be there in the next couple of months. And that's how we will kick off High Stakes Duel. And Chad, you got to figure whenever you have Negreanu versus Hellmuth as your main headline, that's going to draw a lot of interest.
Yeah, I actually seen a tweet from, I think it was Jim Burns of the Las Vegas Review Journal, maybe. Yeah. And saying how this match could even draw mainstream attention, right? So there's only a handful, maybe 5 poker players who have that name recognition that transcends our industry, that really does permeate into the mainstream. And Hellmuth and Negreanu are 2 of those. So you get them here in a heads-up match, when heads-up matches are the flavor of the year, if you will, with the Negreanu Polk, with the Galfond challenges. I could see this being very entertaining, very big. I will say, don't underestimate Hellmuth in a live setting. I think people did that with Esfandiari, and he came out and he showed that he's got some tricks and that he can win. It's interesting because, if Hellmuth, in this match, Negreanu is going to do the rematches, right? If he loses, he's going to issue the rematch. He'll max it out like Esfandiari did. And if Hellmuth happens to win 3 times in a row like he did against Esfandiari, he's going to lock up that $450K or whatever it ended up being. That's just Hellmuth's MO, I think. Whereas if Negreanu wins, I think we could see Negreanu take it to the max, all the way to, I don't know what the end is off the top of my head, Jeff, but it could be like an $8 million heads up match or something like that. Yeah.
Which would be insane.
I also am, well, I'm curious. You know, we talked a little bit last week about the lines on PokerShares, looking at the Bill Perkins versus Landon Tice match. And I'm curious what the lines will look like, Daniel versus Phil, especially considering how much work, obviously, Daniel's done, you know, in the last 4 or 5 months on his game. To me, it would seem that Daniel would likely be a favorite in this spot, although maybe it messes with his game. I don't know.
Well, one of the offshore sites, not PokerShares, but just another sports betting offshore site, initially opened the line as Hellmuth as a slight favorite. Now, it's pretty clear that this site doesn't really know anything about poker, because Sarah, to your point, I think you have to consider Negreanu a favorite, and money came in on Negreanu so quickly that originally they just had to lock betting on Negreanu, and then more and more money came in when they opened it back up. So by now Negreanu is like a minus 300 favorite, so you would have to bet $300 on Negreanu to profit 100, and I think that's where the line should lie. I think Negreanu is certainly a better heads up player. To Chad's point, you know, Phil Hellmuth's success in the heads up arena cannot be argued. And also it's a sit and go. So this is not a 25,000 hand challenge. There will be a lot more variance in that sit and go format. Now, my money would still be on Negreanu at minus 300, but I think that's a fair line.
I agree with you, Jeff. If this was an online heads up challenge, if it was an extended number of hands, Negreanu would be a very heavy favorite. I still think he is the favorite, but it's a little more close than I think a lot of people will give it credit for, just because of the format, because it is live. And who knows? If Negreanu comes, he plays that GTO style that he's been studying, that he's really been working towards. Hellmuth is obviously not going to do that. And Hellmuth, he can get under people's skin, and vice versa. You know, these are two of the best talkers in the game, and getting under people's skin or getting into their heads. And I'm very excited to see it. I wouldn't bet money on it because, you know, I want to enjoy this one for the entertainment aspect. It's going to be fun, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know when they're planning to do this, but hopefully it's sooner than later.
I actually think it would be really interesting to see with Daniel, especially. He was talking about, you know, it seems like ages ago now, but when we saw Daniel versus Doug live, the first match of their challenge, you know, he mentioned using this sort of randomizer to determine when he was going to be, you know, betting in certain spots, making C bets, and that basically he ended up never betting on the turn, or never raising on the turn. And this was just like a result of this random decision making, which was supposed to be GTO, but then everyone said he literally never bet the turn. And so, you know, he was really questioning his own self and doubting his own self, and should I use this? And I think it would be really interesting to see how he balances, you know, his first 30 years of poker playing knowledge and understanding versus, you know, the last 4 months, and how much he leans on or trusts either of those things. I tend to imagine he's probably going to revert in a lot of ways to the things that he knows and trusts from his initial 30 years of poker playing, not specifically in heads up.
Since we don't have the interview yet, you're going to be doing the interview later tonight. You can ask Negreanu a lot of these questions, and I'd be curious to know, sir, ask him what he thinks the line should be on himself, how much of a favorite he thinks that he is. And, you know, Negreanu is a pretty straightforward guy. I think he'll give us his honest assessment in that regard.
And I think Doug was, if anyone would be a good judge of who's the best heads up players at this point in the world, even Doug seemed to suggest that he would put his money on Daniel in most spots against most players at this point, which I thought was a huge kudos. He also said, always bet on yourself. That's the best bet. So I do think Daniel will put a pretty solid line on himself, as he should. And speaking of these sort of dramas and things going down, when we mentioned PokerShares, I did get a message from Terrence Chan. He sent me all the screenshots from his going back and forth with PokerShares, just basically to showcase that he really wasn't being aggressive or mean, since that seemed to be the things that people thought. And also he wanted to clarify, because I said did Mike McDonald really just start the conversation? Are you dumb? I'm like, come on, there was more before that, right? And he was like, no, that's literally how the conversation started, with those exact words. So I did want to throw that out there and just clarify. Mike McDonald, if you're listening, slide into my DMs. You're always welcome to come onto the show. I have a feeling you're both going to want to, and just let this whole thing die at some point.
I think we need like one of these poker clothing companies to make a t-shirt or a hat that just says, "Are you dumb?" Yeah, I mean, I'd buy it. I'd wear it at the poker table.
It's so nasty. And I even said to Terrence, honestly, when I first came into poker, that was my main issue with poker and poker players. I just thought there was a lot of poker players who really were kind of snobbish because they thought they were so smart and so much smarter than everybody. And it's just a very unattractive of quality, in my opinion. Yeah. And I thought the longer I've been in poker, the more I realized that was my own insecurities and my own, like, misperceptions about people, misconceptions about people. But maybe not. I don't know. Maybe like your first instincts are a lot of times the right ones and the best ones. But let's get into it. I need to not forget to write down this important question to ask Daniel about the lines with Phil. Let's just go ahead. You guys will get the juicy info before we even have it. Okay. Hello, everybody. I am joined by Daniel Negreanu, who I mentioned, but I have to say first off the bat, thank you so much for your patience and just understanding. I know you have a million things, and I really appreciate you making the time for me like 40 times.
I'm just hoping that you guys are safe over there with all the craziness going on with the weather.
Dude, it is crazy. Legit, people are dying. I don't even understand what's going on. This is 2021, but it's really made me, I've been loving my life. I've been feeling really great having a home and all that stuff. But all of a sudden I'm like, even next level, like taking a bath room and flushing. Like just the smallest things. It's the best. Okay, so we have like so much to cover, and I know you don't have that much time. So I want to first like just get out of the way. It seems like it's already, yesterday's news, even though we spent the last like 4 to 5 months talking about it on the PokerNews podcast. But let's first talk some Doug Polk challenge. Looking forward to now the Phil Hellmuth challenge. We're calling this the year of heads up action. The first thing I guess I wanted to ask you about is just, you guys buried the hatchet. Doug, when we had him on the show, and also obviously in his YouTubes and his things, he's been very complimentary of you and very impressed, I think, by your game. For those of us who know you, I think most of us knew for sure you would put everything into it. But for you coming out, how do you feel, A, about Doug, and also about his response and reaction to you and your play?
Yeah, I'll say first and foremost, it's reminiscent to me of, well, I'm a hockey guy, right? Often what you see in hockey is you'll see two guys from opposing teams beat the living crap out of each other, just pound each other during the game, right? And then later that evening, you go to the bar and they just finish dinner together and they're having a beer. The two guys who just fought, right? It's kind of like one of those things. There's bad blood, there's this, there's that. It's like, all right, heads up for rolls, let's go, get bloody. And when we're done, hopefully there's a mutual respect for the warriors in the ring. Because, one of my favorite quotes is the man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts. And, it is the man in the arena. And, we both stepped in. Obviously, he had an advantage. That was clear. Most people in my shoes would never have accepted the challenge. Luckily, I'm in a financial position where I could afford, to do so. And I thought it would be really good for my game long term. And I thought, with some hard work, I felt like there was significant improvement available to me, which ended up happening. Unfortunately, the result was nowhere near what I would have hoped. But, in one retrospect, the journey was worth it because I definitely got a lot better at heads up and in poker in general.
Yeah, I think that was clear. And I definitely have way more to talk about in terms of that and your studying and how your game has shifted. But before we get too far, I guess, into talking GTO and all of these other things, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned one of the reasons that you had, sort of initially just accepted the challenge and said, let's do it, is that you were hoping to help kind of promote GG, and you guys weren't able to do that. In hindsight, would you, if you could go back and do it all over again, would you choose to do the challenge again?
Well, now I would, because I've got the experience, right? Like if I would have to start from scratch and not have learned what I did in the last 3-4 months, and there not being sort of any benefit outside of just me losing, which, I'm going to be a big underdog in the match. Not this time. If we did it again, it would be a lot closer. But no, I mean, that was the key thought in my mind. I'm like, all right, this will be great. We'll get all the eyeballs in poker on the GGPoker software, watching every day, playing, depositing. We do a bunch of promos around it. Unfortunately, we were short-sighted in thinking that it would be a possibility, because the idea was really like, all right, well, we can create, a GG for play money, right? And then we settle up on the side, whether Bitcoin or cash or whatever. And we didn't. Then we talked to some lawyers and things and realized, all right, Nevada has regulated online gaming. So this kind of circumvents it. It's clearly, right? So we realized, like, bad for GG, bad for us. And now I'm stuck because I've already said, yes, I'll play this match. And I'm like, oh, shit. Will I be willing to have the egg on my face of saying, you know what, I changed my mind and not play? I could have done that, but no, I thought I might as well go through with it.
Yeah, that's not your style. That's definitely not a D-Nex move. Well, one of the things that I think has shifted in poker in general, something we've seen a lot at World Series of Poker final tables, is this idea of putting together a team, putting together coaches, people who look at your play. I mean, the poker landscape, I think, has changed significantly. And so for you, someone who I think for a long time has been more or less a lone wolf, you've been in this game for a long time doing it by yourself, you compiled a team to help you. Can you talk to me a little bit about what it was like, working with your team, how you chose your team? Doug sort of famously said that he wouldn't have chose the team that you did, which made me wonder what made you choose them.
So that's an interesting question. So when I look back at my history, I've always I haven't really been a lone wolf. When I grew up, I taught poker with Phil Ivey, John Juanda, Alan Cunningham. Of course, the way we broke down hands back then, a lot different than today. Years ago, the late, great Rich Lindacre, who passed away, Tom Marchese, and the like, who else was the third? Yeah, they were like, coaching me when I was playing against Isildur a little bit. So I worked with a couple coaches a couple of years ago, and it was really, really effective for cash and tournaments and things like that. And so I'd already had a relationship with them. And, for me, I had a lot of faith in their ability to, break down the numbers and really teach me in a way that I understand. Because I don't know how. Like, I have the PO solver thing. I don't know how to do it. Like, I press on and then like, okay, solve, right? But the truth is, I found out through speaking with, Matt, who is really the guy who, handles that aspect of it, is that most people who do solves, like, it's a valuable tool, but the vast majority of people misuse it. So if you don't put in, it's really complicated. Like, I don't know how to do it. If you don't put in the correct ranges and the correct options for bet sizes or whatever, you'll get an output that's just wrong, right? So it becomes very intricate. Also, these solves take, for some people that don't have a lot of computing power, can take days. And if you don't wait till it's completely finished, you say, oh, look, it likes this. And you're like, you didn't wait because the machine was learning all of a sudden. So it says, oh, you see, I was supposed to call with Queen 9. And then you look at, oh no, it's learning to fold. It's learning to fold. It went from calling 30% to like never calling, So learning that whole world, I needed help with that, because at the highest stakes now, at the highest levels, poker today, it is so intricate where you can't just half-ass go, YOLO, I'm going to go in there and like mix it up. I'll do some donk leading and I'll just 5 check bet them, do all this stuff. Like, it's just not a thing. You got to learn how to play the game properly.
So I know that obviously there was a lot of money on the line anyways. There's, bragging rights, these things, but for the most part, I know for you guys, a lot of the times there's a lot of side action. Is that something that you were participating in? Is that something you can talk about?
I was very minimal because I didn't care. I didn't need extra motivation, to play well or do my best. So I took a very small piece because Bill Perkins bet a lot on it. So he's like, all right, well, he wanted me to have some incentive to continue past 12-5 because I could have just, waved the white flag at 12-5 and said, all right, good game, GG, GG. And so he kind of gave me some incentive, gave me like 10-1 on 10K or something like that, just a little extra carrot. So yeah, the side action wasn't really a thing for me, but I still did want to win the match. Like, if I had an opportunity, for example, let's say I had an opportunity where I'm up 50,000, okay? And I can fold out 50,000 and win $1, I'm giving them the 50,000, $1 winner. Yes, I'll take it.
I know that's your style. And, I think for most of us looking at the whole thing, it just seemed like an ungodly amount of work, which you clearly did. And, as I was watching some of your post-match stuff and listening to, what Doug had said after the challenge, you said sort of towards the end, obviously the only way to win was to take a lot more risky plays and to like really go kind of crazy. And you felt that this was kind of terrible poker. And it was interesting because Doug said he thought your poker just kept getting better and better in terms of, playing heads up. So I wanted to see if now looking more on it, like what are your thoughts now? Do you think Doug is right? Do you think playing crazy like that is easy?
So here's the thing, right? And I can reveal this now. Post-game interviews, I think both on his part and my part, were somewhat misleading. It wasn't always exactly telling it how it was, right? Like there were moments where I'd watch, because he knows I'm watching his and he knows I'm watching mine. So he would say things like, he can't get it. He needs to stop folding so much in these spots. He can't win folding this much. I'm like, I wonder why he's telling me that, right? Like, is that genuine? Is that honest? And if so, why would he tell me that? So there's like leveling going on, in the post games. So one of the things that I'd said many times throughout the post game was that I was like looking to play as close to GTO as possible. But that's not true. I mean, I was trying to play GTO in most places, but what I'm also trying to do, I figured to beat him, I was going to have to take advantage of his biggest weaknesses, right? Or his tendencies, okay? So let's say GTO is a line, right? Like say the number is 50, that's GTO, right? And then someone who, calls too often or, calls more often than 50, let's say they call 60 when they're supposed to call 50, right? Against that player, if they call too much, which is his tendency and has been for most of his career, whatever, if you underbluff in spots like that against that player, you will actually gain value. And in a lot of ways, that actually did work quite well because I was still getting some calls from him that were incorrect from a GTO perspective. So for a lot of it, I didn't really need to balance my bluffs because he was just calling anyway. Like, I mean, he called me with ace king, no diamond on 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 with 3 diamonds. And I bet the turn and jammed the river. Like, I could have said, you got it. I have a pair of 3s. And he'd be like, good, So he made a lot of really light calls, maybe earlier in the match to set up the meta, if you will. And then I started to open it up because when he started limping, I don't know whether it was by design or not, he started folding now at, specific spots and main lines. So of course, much like in football, you take what the defense gives you, right? So now he's opened up some bluff lines. What people don't realize, and I was going to do content, but I don't know if it's too much of a process. I did what I call a lot of bougie bluffs, okay? A bougie bluff isn't just like bet, A bougie bluff is like call turn with ace high when the board is 4-4, 3-3, and then check, and then the river's a 3, check, he bets, check, raise the river, like a weird kind of bougie bluffs, or 3-bet the river after overbetting. There was one early on when all the guys were, no, D-Nig's supposed to have it here. I bet my left testicle. Well, apparently the guy has little tiny testicles anyway, so it wouldn't be much of a bet. But it was a spot where it came like queen, jack, 3, and then the turn was a 4, and the river was a deuce. I bet the flop, checked the turn, and on the river, deuce, 3, 4, queen, jack, he checked. I overbet the river, okay, was 5-7. He check raised. I have the worst possible hand. I re-raised, right? Because I felt like, that was a good bougie bluff. So bougie bluffs were always a part of it, but a lot of mainline bluffs, I felt like his tendency was to overcall to a certain degree. There was also one other thing I was doing at certain points in the match. I was overfolding in some spots because the way that he was constructing his ranges, like especially early on with the overbets, he was taking a lot of value into the overbet lines, and this is very technical stuff. He was taking value into the overbet lines that GTO says you're not supposed to do. So like GTO says, okay, you can bet 2/3 pot here, but you can't bet 1.5. He was betting 1.5. So when that happens, right, when someone takes way more value to their overbets, what that means is the ratio of value to bluffs is even more magnified. So against that, he's way less likely to be bluffing if he also has value combos that he's not theoretically supposed to have. So in a lot of those big spots, everyone's like, oh, Daniel always folds the river. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's just correct in a lot of spots. And every time I did call, it seemed like he had it. Like, oh, king's up. You have better kings up. Cool. Very nice. Actually, I felt like I got coolered an insane amount of times throughout the entire match. But, such is life.
Well, and I think even Doug had said, after 25,000 hands, it is whatever it is. But had you guys continued, that the margin of, difference between your guys' play was just getting smaller and smaller. I know that you had less time to prepare because you're also busy playing the main and things on GG, which he openly admitted, I got like at least a month jump on Daniel. And so, you talked a little bit about how much you've learned. And it's interesting because I remember even a few years ago after, playing with the Germans at maybe the Super High Roller Bowl, you were one of the players who came out and said, like, these guys are just sickos. I want to, get better, do better, which you did and have. And I think this Heads Up No Limit game is just one that for the most part, most players just don't have the time or energy to get deep into. You have now, and you and Phil are you're confirmed, I guess, to do a Heads Up challenge against each other. And this is such an interesting spot because, first of all, I think now everyone, like, the lines are so far on you because of the last few months. I guess first, let's just start with this. What would you put the lines at now for you and Phil?
Well, it depends on what the match looks like, right? So first and foremost, and I obviously got a lot better at Heads Up, but even day one, if I were to play Phil Hellmuth based on the way that he plays and I play, I was going to beat him anyway. Like, I'd be a favorite anyway. Now that I've got a lot more, advanced knowledge and, theory on Heads Up, it's just even bigger of a favorite. Now, Phil would never, in his right mind, like, he talks a big game, but he's completely full of shit. Oh, he says, I'm going to play Doug Polk. I'm ready. No, you're not. You were not going to play Doug Polk. And he goes, I'm going to limp 90% of buttons. And Doug's going to go, I'm so scared. What am I going to do? You limped over your head. So he was never going to play that. So I was like, I want to play him a 25,000 hand match, right? Like, because that's really a test where, you're more like, it's a bigger hand sample, right? So we're not going to be playing that. What we'll play is a high stakes duel, similar to what he did against Antonio, which could, it's got deep. It starts with like 500 big blinds, which is good for me. So it starts really, really deep. And then, it's got enough structure and play. Like, Phil does a good job of kind of avoiding situations typically where he's going to be really, really exposed. Because deep stack play is not going to be his forte. He makes the most of his mistakes come deep stack. He can't win. Like, so the way that I foresee the match actually going is I'll build up a lead. And the only way that he'll be able to win is if near the end, when we're short stacked, he wins a few all-ins. But I don't see much of a chance for him winning. I would say with as many chips as we have, I would make myself like 2.5, like between 2.5 to 1 favorite.
And according to Jeff, right now you're like a 3-1 favorite on most the betting sites. But of course we understand, like, doing a 3 rounds or whatever, it's a completely different situation. And there's been a lot of interesting things. Some of the interviews I heard you give, or I think this was actually on the Dat Poker podcast with your guys' own podcast, talking about some after the first live match with you and Doug that everyone had said, oh, he literally always folds the turn, but that you were, using these randomizers, you were just doing what you were supposed to be doing. And so I was kind of thinking, looking at you and Phil doing this live Heads Up together, you have your own style. Obviously you have 30 years I'm guessing of, poker experience behind you, which you even admitted you had to like turn off for a lot of this Heads Up challenge. So now looking at this Heads Up challenge with Phil, how much do you feel like you're going to be relying on this GTO and what you've learned, from this experience versus, sort of going back to I'm going to probably win anyways with my own poker knowledge
right.
from before.
So before, this update, I'm mostly an exploitative player. Phil Hellmuth is extremely exploit. He doesn't do anything GTO, nothing standard. He's completely his own brand and his own ideas and everything like that, right? I felt like exploitatively I was going to be able to destroy that because I know, how to. Now, when you add in like sort of GTO baseline principles, especially deep stack, like that being the starting point, it allows a lot of situations to be very, very easy for me. But mostly, I think where probably one of the bigger edges lies is my learning, because when I started the match with Doug, I had 2 bet sizes. That's it. Either 20% a pot or 75% a pot. That's limiting. That's not good. If you were a GTO robot, you can make that work. I'm not. But once I started to be able to introduce more sizes, over bets, 2/3 pot, 1/3 pot, 40%, all these different things in different spots, I feel like that's going to be where my biggest edge is. Because Phil, his bet sizing, especially deep stack, is kind of all over the map. Well, it's not all over the map, it's just bad. Like it's kind of, I don't want to give away too much, but it's not good, okay? It's not going to, so like with Doug put me in a lot of like incredibly tough spots. 4x pot the river. Holy shit. But he's doing it where he's, balancing bluffs. So now you're sitting there with top pair and you're thinking, oh boy, okay, big deal, I have top pair. He just bet, 40,000 into 10,000. Am I supposed to just call with top pair and pray? Because it's just a bluff catcher, right? If he's bluffing, I win. If he's not, I never win. So that becomes a much more complicated, formulaic situation where you have to break down whether or not you're supposed to call, what hands call, what hands fold. With Phil, he's not going to be doing stuff like that, right? You're not going to see Phil like on a 4 straight board, like 4x bomb the river. There was a hand I folded against Doug. The board was ace, deuce, 3, 6. Ace, deuce, 3, 4, 6. Okay. He checked on the river. I have a 5. I have a straight. Okay. I bet a little bit, 1/3 pot, little cutesy one. I bet like 3 big blinds total. You know what he did? He check raised to 167 big blinds. So you're sitting there and you have a straight, right? And you think, well, I guess I'm supposed to call, right? But you're not just supposed to call, because when he does that, he's usually going to have a 5, which is a straight with you. And a lot of the time he's going to have a 7 with it, which for the better straight, which means you're just, you're punting. So spots like that, you're just not going to face against Phil. Like, he doesn't have that kind of repertoire. He hasn't really, to be honest with you, adapted or updated his game in the 20 years I've known him. Like, he still kind of does the exact same stuff. And to his credit, it still works against a lot of people because they fall for it. I think, like I said earlier, like if he played against, the Wizards at the high stakes, like none of his little antics would work. It's just, it'd just be too much to overcome the fundamental, weaknesses.
It's interesting. It's something that Doug said that I really took to heart in thinking about my own self. He said, you should always bet big on yourself because, well, if you know yourself and you know you're going to work really hard, then you would always bet big on yourself because you know how hard you're going to work at it. And I was thinking that you probably also could always say, yeah, I'm always going to bet on myself because I know I'm going to work super hard. And no disrespect to Phil, but I was actually thinking the same thing. I was wondering, would Phil say to himself, I'm going to work as hard or harder than Daniel? And the answer, I guess we're saying, is probably not.
Well, it's Phil. Phil does this thing, right? And he said he does this every possible time he has. It's a way of him. So here's how he tries to like sort of insult me and demean me in a way, but it's very passive aggressive. He does this. It's the spiel. It goes like this. He's like, I know Daniel's coaches. They're brilliant guys, and they came to me, and we agreed on a lot of the concepts and everything. So I thought to myself, well, what can they teach me? But it's great for Daniel, right? As though, Daniel dumb, I could learn from people, but like Phil couldn't possibly learn anything from the younger generation. And that's sort of one of the bigger differences between him and I. I'm from that era, the golden era, 2004 or whatever, right? Not many people are left from that era still relevant today because a lot of them were stuck in like, this is how to play. And they don't look at the young guys and say, what are they doing better than me? I've always done that. I've always shown a deep respect for like the young grinders. Like I always believe that, sure, when you make it, the hardest thing to do is stay there because there's always younger people grinding it out. Like Rocky 3, I mentioned this before, but Rocky 3, he's already the champ. He's taking pictures, doing sponsorships, blah, blah, blah. Clubber Lang is sweating, grinding in the gym and just destroys him, right? And there's a lot of parallels there. And that's why I watch the movies every year. There's a lot of parallels to poker, right? And I've always looked at these young guys and I'm like, they're in the trenches, bro. They're like, 10, 12 hours a day with solvers and playing and grinding. Like, how dare you, frankly, how dare you think that you can just like never study poker, but have an edge over people at the highest levels, on a regular basis. And he does it without actually ever playing against them. He just talks like he could beat them, right? So that's for him, that's just good enough. And he's always careful about manipulating the public perception, right? Because we know there's diehard poker players who all know the nitty gritty. They know the Jason Koons and the Stephen Chidwicks and the limit. Those guys are the killers. And they know like me and Phil, we're good for our time, but we're not good. But most people still think Phil Hellmuth's the best. Like he's the best ever, and it's like his results, the World Series of Poker, you got to clap. They're amazing, but to suggest that, in this day and age, with the people in their prime working and playing at their best, that, him or I, and I'll use myself, are at that level without the work. Frankly, it's delusional to think that. You just can't imagine. Like, how could you possibly be on the level when you don't even understand, even at a base level, what they're studying? You just think you know it, but you've never even seen it. Like what he said about the match with me, he said, I didn't like the way Daniel played. You know how many hands he watched? 0. He didn't watch any of it, but said, I didn't like the way Daniel played. That's just fast. See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, how do you do that? How do you say like, oh, that movie, I hated it. Did you watch it? No, didn't watch it, but it was terrible. Got it. Okay. You're real credible then as a source. Or maybe Mike Madison told him I didn't play well. So he's like, they're the guru, you know?
Jeff even mentioned it before we did this interview. He said, well, Phil did mention in the interview that he never actually watched any of the match, which I think it's really interesting. And you've touched on it something actually a few times in this interview that made me think. I was just on a podcast with Marley Cadero, and she actually said she really loves a lot of the content that you've been doing. But that what people don't realize about you is that, of course, a lot of what you're doing is like a shtick or a character or something. This is like the Daniel that we see, and you might be a completely different person behind closed doors. Obviously, Phil Hellmuth has a shtick. I have a shtick. Everyone has it. And this might be like kind of weird and intense, but I know the kind of guy you are. Can you talk a little bit about, how much is like the shtick? You have to do the post-match interviews and whatever, but how much of what we are seeing is really you?
I will say it's all really me, like as genuine as you could ever imagine. And what I will say is this stuff. I think maybe you can relate too. Like, when you're on, like you're on now, right? You're working. When you're with your friends at the bar, you might like, be a little different, right? When I'm promoting something, I'm like, hey, I'm Daniel Negreanu here for GGPoker, bringing it to you live from the Dean Egg's house. We got flip and goes. So that's promoter style, right? Well, what I feel like when I'm in the right environment, like when I'm playing on this chess.com tournament, right? I know there's a lot of young kids watching this. So I'm not cursing and, doing that, right? When I'm doing my streams on my Twitch or, I'm playing the post games, like when I'm freaking out and being pissed off, that's genuine in the moment. Like I can laugh at myself because I'm like, I look at that behavior and I think, what an absolute fool. Like I laugh at it. Like when I'm smashing the laptop, like, you idiot. Like I think that most people can relate to that because they've felt it, right? The difference is like, I'm pretty comfortable. Well, no, I'm very comfortable in my own skin. So there is a part of my personality that is engaging and fun-loving and, good with people and, positive or whatever. But then I get pissed off too. And I get angry and I don't pretend. I've actually got a big problem with and I'm not going to name any names, but there's sort of this submerging culture in poker where everyone's got this Instagram life. Perfectly poshed. And then they've got fucking quotes up the wazoo. Like 18 paragraphs of I'm so #blessed to live in gratitude. Like, oh my God, I get it a little bit here and there, but like every one of your posts, like it's too much now. Meanwhile, what are you doing? Like crying in a bowl of cereal at 1 a.m. about how depressed you are? Like, listen, it's okay to be raw and real. It's okay to have bad days. It's okay not to have it all figured out. And when you actually act like you've got it all figured out, people find it patronizing, I think, for the most part. And it's like, listen, if I wanted a guru, I would tell you. And I've gotten accused of that in my lifetime. I'm a vegan, right? I've learned to be not militant about it. Like, that's me. Not everybody else is, but I'll share my thoughts on it. I'm not saying you have to go vegan or whatever like that. Or I've had things that have worked in my life that I share with other people. I'm like, hey, listen, I like to set goals. I like to do this. I do that. I share that. But I don't try to come from a place of condescension where I'm telling you what you need to be doing. Because I think a lot of these faux enlightened people are they're just faking it till they make it in a lot of ways. And I don't think that's necessarily bad for them because they need that. But I think that there is this phony cutout picture of the word poker ambassador. What's a poker ambassador? What the fuck is a poker ambassador? What is that? It's the stupidest term ever. Like when someone says ambassador, I go, you're an ambassador? Like for what country? What do you do? What is your role as ambassador? What heads of state do you speak with? Like, listen, you're a poker player. You're playing a grungy game, right? Seedy, old school. That's the way the game got popular. The game didn't get popular because we were talking about different ranges and charts and pre-flop. The game was popular because Sam Grizzle and Mike Matisow and Sean Chacon almost got in a fight. Parad Friedman accused the guy of getting an ante, and he almost punched him in the head. Clashes, war. That's what these heads-up duels like myself with Doug, with Phil Hellmuth, I think that's the sweet spot. And this purity contest, in poker, we're like, oh, we have to say, hero and villain. Don't say he because women play poker too. And it's like, hold the fucking phone, bro. It's too much sometimes. But anyway, I don't have people in my life like that. And my wife, she probably more than anybody, she hates that more than I do. She's raw and real. Yeah, she's like, this is some bullshit right here. And I'm like, oh, they're just trying to be polite. She's like, ugh. She's the one who hates when people do #blessed. It's like, well, good for you. Good for you. It's too much. So I don't live that world. I've got warts, right? People have seen them. I've cursed. I've had some cock fucks. I've had some, different things like that. I've had some fine moments and I've had some not so good moments, but that's really who I am. I can be, here's the thing. I learned this too when I did this course on emotional intelligence, like Choice Center years ago. I learned that okay, there are multiple parts of who I am, right? Yeah. And when I'm in my worst, when I'm in my survival mode, I'm angry, I can be arrogant. I can be condescending. I can show a lack of empathy or caring for other people and stuff like that. That's me at my worst, right? That's not all of who I am, but that's certainly something I struggle with. Humility. What I want to be is I want to be caring, humble, accepting of people, not so judgmental, kinder, all that kind of stuff. So I have that, but this is part of me too. And I'm not going to pretend this part doesn't exist because that's bullshit. We all have, our best selves, and we have moments where we're not our best selves. And I think it's important to embrace all those things, work on it. I don't want to be a jackass all the time, but I'm going to be a jackass sometimes, and you're not going to like it. And you're going to try to cancel me, but it's not going to work because there's nothing to cancel. What do I already got money. I got the wife that I always dreamed of. I got a house. If you don't like what I'm doing, hey, how about this? If you don't like it, what's your saying?
Don't listen.
Yes, exactly. But you know what's amazing to me too? It seems like the people who are most critical of me, right? Dissect every little thing I say and watch me all the time. If you hated somebody, would you spend all of your days obsessed with everything they do or just change the channel? Yes. There's plenty of poker streams, plenty of things you can do outside of this. If you don't like me, that's fine. I probably don't like you anyway. And I really how many people do you have in your life, Sarah? Or they're like, man, I really like that person. I wish they liked me. Yeah. I've got zero. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I couldn't be more on Amanda's, train or your train. I think you're definitely speaking to the choir. And, I think, what's interesting is someone was asking me once recently, what do I think people are looking for in content? What do people really want to watch? And really what they want to watch are your weaknesses. They want to see your vulnerabilities. They want to see you fail. And actually, I think it's because those are the things that are the most relatable. Those are the things that we can see in someone and say, even though that person is my idol, they also fart or whatever. And that is I think, helpful for humanity more than this oh my gosh, I'm your idol. And also my life is so perfect and everything is perfect. And you're 100% right. Those people are fully crying in their bathrooms at 2 o'clock.
Well, here's the thing. I think the mistake a lot of people make is they think of vulnerability as, crying, sad, depressed. Me being vulnerable is you seeing me post-match yelling, this fucking guy, I can't make a fucking straight. I got 10, Jack, Queen, King. I got a fucking flush draw. This fucking guy fades every hand. He's running so hot. That's me being vulnerable because, I know how to not be that way. Okay. Yeah. If I chose to have I could have been frustrating match today, felt like things could have gone a little bit better, but you know what? That's fake. What vulnerable and honest and real is you seeing me totally losing my shit. And you're right about one thing. And like I said, it's what do you call love-hate. People either typically love me or they hate me. And for the same reason some people hate me, others enjoy it. Just the fact that I'm willing to be myself and open and honest. And some people don't like what that looks like. Hey, that's okay. Like I said, if I'm not your cup of tea, plenty of other opportunities for you to, watch poker and learn from people.
And I can do the interview for you then, by the way, too. If you want to just be that way, I can just tell you, you got really lucky in a lot of spots and you feel really grateful to have won this tournament. And I feel like the same with this sort of scrum, the post-match football games where I don't even watch this stuff, but I know it's it was the team, good job team or whatever. Nobody wants to hear this. If you can write it yourself, you don't want to.
That's the cliche sports. We gave it 110% today. It was a team effort. There's no I in team. We just go out there every shift and give it our best and, play, take it one step at a time, one game at a time. So you literally just said absolutely nothing.
Nothing. You want to see that guy be like, I'm so pissed, dude. This is the worst game ever, or whatever.
The people that make a mark in this world are typically the ones that go off script, and they actually say what they will. I'm a hockey guy, so I listen to guys like Drew Doughty. So Drew Doughty, he had a kind of not a great game recently, about a week ago or whatever. And at the end of the game, the team lost, and he's like, what do you think you could have done differently? What do you, how do you think you played? And he's like, I think I dominated every aspect of the game. I don't think there's any way I could have possibly played any better. And he's joking, right? But he's like, fuck you for the question, right? So I like people that are honest, genuine, real. It's, and there's a lot of people, I look at a guy like Lex Veldhuis, and I've always, had a good relationship with him and friendly. And I think that he's raw and real and always love him. But then there's some people that I've known in my life for a long time who have sort of morphed into unrecognizable people. Like, I know them away from what I see on their social media, but then when I look at them, I'm like, who is this person? Because they're completely full of shit.
I'm with you. And I think the saddest part of it is that I don't think it's just poker. I think it's sort of a cultural phenomenon. I think this is the new thing is now for everybody to just be the best version of themselves all the time and always be telling everyone else how shitty they're doing and how they're not living up to the virtues of the now. And honestly, it drives me insane. Yeah, exactly. It drives me insane. And so, and I just appreciate that about you. I did make this compilation of, you losing it, which I had so much fun doing because it's fun and it's interesting for me. I do a lot of stuff that's not so interesting. But I did try to start the video with you saying, this is not PC. I'm not here to, be your politically correct person. This is just me saying what I want. And I appreciate that. I personally value that a lot. And I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm excited to see how this Phil thing goes down. I think we all are. And anything else like that you're working on before I let you go or that you want to, share with people?
Well, yeah, like I wanted to share real quickly that so my life's always about it, like some sort of goal or journey. When people use the word journey, it's like, oh, but no, really, journey makes sense in this space. Like I always look to strive to do something new. So when the Doug match was over, that's a chapter that's closed. And I gotten into chess. So I'm kind of devoting similarly the same sort of devotion to this chess tournament. I was invited to the Pog Champs 3. For those that aren't familiar, it's a chess tournament with not like super experts, but it's like, famous people, whether they're streamers you've never heard of because you're not a gamer, like, Pokemani and XQC and The Beast and Rubius and all these people. Then you got Rainn Wilson, who was on The Office. You got Logic the Rapper, and you got yours truly from the poker world. So I was invited to play in this chess tournament, and I'm not very good, but I've won my first 2 matches in group play, and I have a match on Saturday. So I'm very excited about that. It's a lot of fun to step out of your element and, into a different world, and the viewership's insane, okay? But again, as I said, I know that it's a different audience. Like this is chess, right? Like a lot of kids. So there's no cockfucks in that, right? Like if PokerNews, if people are offended by that, then like they would have turned you off a long time ago. That much I know. So I feel like we're safe here. But yeah, so that's been a lot of fun. That's been my newest thing. And then when I'm done with this, because it'll end in March, from March 1st, I guess, I'll start, planning ahead to play Phil Hellmuth in the High Stakes Duel. On TV, and I'm looking forward to that. I think the way the format works is here's the thing. I think you have to accept 2 rematches. So like if for him he'd have to win 3 in a row to beat me, that's like 80-1. Okay, so for him, because I'm not going to say no to a rematch, right? So let's say he does beat me the first time, I'm playing him again. He beats me again, I'm playing him a 3rd time, and he has to double the stakes every time. So I'm going to get his money sooner or later. I don't know if he will ask for a rematch against me, but we shall see. But I want to say, too, with him, I love Phil away from the table. He's great, funny, cracks me up. He's a great personality. He's my favorite person to watch play poker on TV. But I've always had like a fun time needling him, bringing him back to reality and mocking him for his delusion. But I do so, I think, for the most part in a fun-loving way. Sometimes maybe we cross the line, but he comes at me, too, with these passive-aggressive jabs like, oh, these coaches. Yeah, well, I mean, I obviously didn't need them, because I already know everything. But I thought for Daniel, they're brilliant minds. They're probably brilliant because they said, yeah, Phil, I like that. And he's like, oh, well, there you go. Got it figured out. You got one concept. Maybe you're right. So anyway, I'm looking forward to it. I expect a lot of fun jabber. Unlike the Doug match where I expected it to be, I didn't know what to expect during the live portion. I didn't know if we were going to go, bloody or what. But, we ended up being friendly. And I'd say that I mentioned this before, but the one thing I learned, if I could go back, right, because there's always learning experience, to how the whole thing happened with me and Doug, right, and go back and change something. I would change one specific thing. He was a young up-and-comer, right, making content, all this kind of stuff. He did some things I didn't like about, with Jason Mercier and friends of mine. I was like, this is way out of line. What I should have done, considering my place in poker and my role or ambassadorship or whatever the case may be, what I should have done was actually just reached out to him and had a conversation with him and explained to him why, this isn't ideal and do this and that. And I think it would have left the flames down. But for him, he's a guy who's got a team behind him, which is really good at making videos, right? So they come at you. So I think for him, he felt slighted. He felt attacked by me. And it was really more a case of me not accepting his contributions to in the ways that he was packaging it. Because I knew some of his content was good. I just felt like the personal jabs at people and the attacks were totally unnecessary because his content is good and stands on its own. He didn't need the clickbait stuff, right? But as I said, what I think I learned is that because I was older, I should have been the adult and, earlier on just been like, because the truth was for years, even when we had this beef, anytime I saw him in public, he was like super nice to me. He's like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, fuck you, dude. Like, you just made a video of freaking dildos in my mouth and shit posted a picture where I got 3 hairs on my head and fucked up teeth and you want to just like chat? Like, come on, bro. But it just told me that, a lot of it for him, I think, was shits and giggles and stick, and it got heated. But I'm glad that chapter's closed. And, we were very civil since then. We even chatted about playing me some chess games here and there. Not for money. We're not doing a chess challenge. I'm over that shit with him. But who knows? Maybe next year we'll do a poker one again.
I mean, I hope that that's in general, first, like with you and Phil, I think we should be allowed to say, hey, I think that this about this person, but also they're my friend. I respect them on these other levels. Like, I just feel like we should be able to say things sometimes that are less than gracious about people, because these are truths and we can still be friends with them. And I did say this to Doug. I think I've learned a few things from my husband about respect and what, that means to men in a little bit different for a woman, I think, to understand how important that is. But exactly like you said, like 2 fighters who go into the ring, who afterwards, can shake hands and be friends. I think both you and Doug must have respect for each other. And I think especially for men, if you have that foundation, you can clearly move on, move forward, leave it in the ring and keep going. And I'm never 100% sure kids these days like live their lives in the content creation. So sometimes I'm not even sure what's real, right? Like, are they really like wanting to beef, or do they just want to make a video that gets clicks? It's really hard to tell.
Yeah, another thing to his credit, and it's something I appreciate. We talk about people that are, genuine or whatever. Like, he really, so here's the thing. He will say whatever he thinks is true, unapologetically, openly, and whatever. I was going to say, like, he gives 0 shits about what people think. That's not true. He clearly cares what people think, but it doesn't stop him from saying or doing what he believes in, right? Because, like, you can tell. I mean, you can just tell. Like, for example, the whole luck thing, and I was like, I'm fucking unlucky, da-da-da. And he was like, no, you're not, da-da-da. Like, that's just ego talking, right? It was my ego saying, shit, you've been lucky. And then it's his ego saying, no, I'm just better, right? It's like, just that's who we are. So he definitely cares about what people think. But to his credit, it doesn't stop him. Like, he doesn't have an overlord boss who is like making sure that he stays, he's non-cancelable, I guess. People that are self-made and, create their life the way that they do, they're not cancelable. You can't, like, especially in today's day and age. I mean, there's YouTube, there's all these different platforms. You can get your message out. So what we see in the mainstream, I think, if you're an actor or if you actually are an influencer and stuff like that, I guess it would matter. But if you've made your money, you got your perfect wife that you're happy to have, you got your life, like, who cancel this, bro? Cancel you go cancel this, eat a sausage.
I'm so with you. And I 100% agree that I also think, I think it's hard for anyone to really say that they don't care at all what other people think. I think it's human nature to care, but the people that matter, I think, are the people who do care somewhat what people think, but don't let it stop them from doing and saying what they believe. And really, I think Phil's like that. I think you're like that. I think Doug's like that. I think a lot of the people that you see rise to the top of the, fame charts, if you will, in poker and in the world are the people that just say what they really think. And it's because
I will say this. There was an evolution for me, because I know for most of my life, I definitely cared. I cared because this, as you're young, you're making a name and all this stuff matters to you, right? Since I, got married, and my wife, she has like a really positive effect on me in this regard, because I realized like all I really give a shit about is what she thinks of me. And she's got my back in every situation, whether I'm right or wrong. And I've actually evolved to a place where, the hate, the Twitter comment, none of that, I give 0, like literally 0 shits. Like, I laugh now. Like, I laughed anyway, but now I can really like take it to the next level laughing. when people come at me with stuff. Like, and I come back with some really childish, little puppy. I come back with some childish retorts occasionally because it's fun and I don't give a shit. Like Ryan Fifi, okay? If you're listening, little Fifi with the little pinky, okay? Little pinky dick, little Fifi. So little Fifi came at me, and obviously it's very immature to mock the guy because he has a small little pinky penis, right? You know, because it's not his fault, right? It's just not his fault. But I thought it was funny, and it's stupid, and it's childish, and I don't give a shit. If you don't like it, don't listen. But, you know, and if you don't like it, Fifi, there's a support group for people with pinky dicks, and there's also pumps and different things you can do, you know, and there's other ways to please a woman as well. So it's not all lost for you. Anyway, so how immature did we finish that on? Yes.
Dude, I'm with you though. And yeah, and I do understand. And I think too, even like now having kids, it's very, very much changed my perspective on the amount of fucks given about what other people think. Because yeah, I think as you build your own family, you care mostly about your family. And I think that's human. I think it's just human.
And it's exhausting too. It's exhausting to keep up and care with what the narrative is. And that's why my concern is for teenagers growing up in this world right now, because they live in social media world where like, you know, likes and comments and all this stuff, it's like it defines them to a certain degree. If you're not careful, and I think in a lot of ways it does, like, you know, increased number of like suicides, especially amongst young girls who now people can sit behind a keyboard, say awful things to this person who maybe is not equipped to deal with that emotionally or whatever, spiritually, whatever you want to say. And, you know, it's sad. Like it's unfortunate. And there's really no putting this back in the can. Social media is here to stay. We're not getting rid of it. So we're going to have to learn to teach our kids to toughen up. No more safe space bullshit, right? We teach them young. Life is hard. You're going to fall down. You're going to scrape your knee. People are going to call you a fat, stupid fuck. People are going to call you whatever they want, all this kind of shit. You know, don't take it personal. That's their opinion. Just say thanks for the feedback. Don't let it define you, right? And that's, I think, like for this next generation coming forward, the most important lesson they can learn, because we're coddling this generation to a certain degree, and it's not their fault at all. There's a book called Coddling of the American Mind that specifically discusses this, and how if we don't let kids feel the emotional pain by, you know, hiding them from trigger warnings and all this kind of stuff, when they do in the real world, they won't be equipped, right? When you want to gain muscles, you break the muscles down. You tear them down so that they build stronger for the next time. If you don't build up your emotional, you know, tolerance for all this kind of namesake stuff and like, you know, people making fun of you or whatever, it can be like a death sentence for a lot of these kids because they're totally not prepared. So enough with the trigger warnings, enough with the safe spaces. Let's move towards like getting people to understand what the real world looks like, prepare them. What is it? Don't try to prepare the road for the kid, prepare the kid for the road.
Yes. And also that they're going to be afraid to be themselves, to say things that people don't like, to be offended. And then then it's terrifying to think we will live in a world where the politicians and the great leaders of the world are all afraid to do anything or say anything that matters because they just want to make sure they fall in line and don't get called out for, you know, saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing.
Here's what happens, right? Like, I don't know, my wife and I were talking about Chris Harrison from The Bachelor because he got in some hot water recently for some comments. And we were, you know, had an open discussion about it. And it's like, here's the problem. When someone does try to talk about a, you know, say a very complicated topic, hot button issue like racism or anything like that, right? And then they say something maybe not exactly perfect or not right, and they didn't say it correctly. It's like, now they have to come up with this long, extensive apology. Now they can't do their show anymore and all this kind of stuff, where what ends up happening as a result of that is it just
no conversation.
You know what? I'm not talking about this shit ever publicly. So what happens is it goes goes underground. It doesn't go away. It's just not talked about publicly. Matt Damon said it so well, because Matt Damon got in hot water for something that boggles my mind. He was just discussing, you know, sexual assault and rape. And he says, you know, there are degrees of it. Like obviously, you know, saying, hey, honey, and slapping her on the butt at work is different than, you know, raping a child or molesting a child or something like that, right? And he got shit on for that. And he's like, I'm never going to talk about it again. For making the most obvious, he was like, you can't demean people's experience and da-da-da, like, because they implied that he was saying that, you know, one is okay, one is not. He was just saying there are degrees of it, right?
Yeah.
And he said it. And people are not given the benefit of the doubt for their intent often enough. And, you know, they're held to this standard that is impossible, this purity contest to like never say something that's not woke. And I'm glad I don't have to live in that world. And I have empathy for those that do live in a spotlight that have to be careful. But we're in a dangerous place with that, where these conversations are going to happen and they're better open, right? Because when you can have the open conversation, then you go, dude, no, that's way out of line.
Yes.
You know, and then the guy can go, oh, you know what? You're right. Now there's going to be none of that, because he's not going to, you know, nobody's going to, you're only going to talk to your bubble. So your bubble's going to agree with you and you'll be like, you know what? That's true. Da, 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 da. Whereas if you had the open discussion with people and it didn't mean you losing your job because, you know, you made a comment that maybe was off colored or whatever, even if you, that's the thing, is like, even when you apologize, like Chris Harrison, you know, he worded some things poorly when talking about race, and then, you know, he put out an apology, and then he's like, I'm stepping away from the show for a little while. I'm like, it's too much, this shit. Like,
everyone. So we're all just like living in this police state of being afraid of saying anything or doing anything. And you're right. And then it just stifles discussion. And when you stifle discussion, you stifle ideas and exchanges of thoughts. And yeah, that's how we grow. That should be how we learn. And honestly, I'm terrified.
You shouldn't be afraid to ask a question. Let's say, for example, you know, you're in a room with people of different race. To ask a question that's related to racism or something like. But now people, they'll be so scared they don't word it right. Oh, and you think this because of this? And like, no. Just like, I'm asking because I want to know and I want to learn, but I'm too scared, so I'm not going to. You know, and I've even noticed myself, like, there's certain times I see, you know, stuff going on Twitter and I want to chime in. I'm like, nah, don't. You know what? Because it's just going to open up a can of worms.
100%. I was just talking to my husband about it. For the last like 7 years or something, I just have completely stayed off of anything, even remotely hot button, because unlike you, same thing, I'm not like contained or self-made. And God forbid I get, you know, on the wrong side of things, which I'm almost always going to be on the wrong side of things. And, you know, that's it. Then you have to worry about your job. You have to worry about all these things that just like, you know, I'm like, okay, is it that important? No, I guess I'll just shut up and watch everyone else like lose their mind. But the group of people who are saying things, and I don't even need to say like unpopular, but who are asking questions, right?
Or maybe
that group of people is getting smaller and smaller.
But even there's a reason. Even people, when they speak from ignorance because they just don't know any better and they say it wrong, like they're vilified instead of educated, which is the mistake. Like, if you really want to make a positive change for the world in progressive ways and really like make sure that we're more welcoming and inclusive, right? When a 75-year-old dealer, you know, who's dealing at the Horseshoe says, hey, honey, you look beautiful today. Don't vilify him as a freaking sexual assaulting old evil man who's a sexist pig. Just say sweetly to him, it's like, oh, that, you know, that's very sweet of you, but just so you know, we don't say stuff like that no more, because it's kind of like makes one, and he'll be like, I'm so sorry. Do you think this man's intent was to demean? No, but like he does that once and people are like, you know, claws at him. That's got to change. It's sad. When I see it, it's sad.
And it's just lacking in empathy, like just recognizing that other people also have different ways they were raised or different opinions. And it's okay for other people to have different opinions. The whole world doesn't have to agree or act the same or fall into the same box. If you really are so sure that how you believe is right, it should be fine for other people to not believe that, because you can just keep doing what you're doing and you keep doing you and being right in whatever you're doing.
Yeah,
and
no,
I do think that.
What I would suggest is this. If you are one of those people who, you know, want the world to be more progressive and, you know, woke or whatever, for lack of a better term, and if that's your genuine goal, right? What is the most effective strategy to get there, right? Is it A, be militant, point out every mistake everybody makes, vilify them and try to cancel them, and rid the world of those people? Or B, when people do speak out of turn, or, you know, in something you say, have the decency to explain to them calmly why, you know, that's kind of out of line or whatever. And maybe they won't agree with you in some spots, but that's a way to move the needle towards this militant idea of like, it's, you know, you're either perfect or you're an awful human being. Human beings are complicated. As I was talking about before, we all have different aspects of my personality. There's some parts of myself that I really like, and there's other parts that I wish, you know, didn't show his ugly head as often. But such is life. I got to accept who I am and constantly try to work towards being, you know, the best version of myself. But I'm never going to be perfect. No, neither are you or anybody listening. So let's stop trying to put forth tests that are unpassable by any human being in the world.
And let us just be our real, awful, terrible, wonderful selves, please. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to talk to you. I was kind of sad when I thought I wasn't going to be able to do this interview. It's been too long. We have to be catching up at least once a year. We basically missed a whole entire year because of because of the Rona. And I really look forward to, I hope, having a cocktail with you and your wife. I don't even know that I've seen you guys together since you've been married. I think we would have a really good cocktail hour. So pencil it in, hashtag in the future, hashtag not blessed, hashtag get shithoused, and just like go crazy. And
You'll appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
It was a pleasure as always.
Well, I don't know what Daniel said yet, but I have to imagine, and I hope that this was an awesome, super fun interview. He was very kind in rescheduling multiple times because of my lack of internet power and water. And he's just so gracious for somebody who I know has a million interview requests and a million things going on. I really appreciated his understanding and his patience. And I know he was really busy this week. So regardless of what he said, a big thanks to Daniel. What do you guys have going on this weekend? What's going on in the land of people who can still drive out in the world and do things?
I mean, for me, it's going to be beautiful out here. We're going to be up into the 20s, maybe flirting with 30 degrees, which
get your sunscreen out, boy.
It is quite amazing. I won't say it's t-shirt weather, but you will see people out, walking from the parking lot to the store without a coat on type of thing. That's just the way it is in Wisconsin when we're on the come up. And so I'm looking forward to that, because it's been so cold where you don't even want to go outside the last week or so. And then just getting ready for these events we talked about. The MI Coupe is starting up in Michigan, so I'm going to be paying close attention to that. The Party Poker US online series there in New Jersey, and just getting prepared for some of these live events that are coming up. It's strange because it's been so long. I get to reach out to my reporters, give them some work, book some travel, and just start making some plans. And it's not normal yet, but it just does feel like it's the first few steps on the way back to that world. And I hope it keeps continuing here throughout 2021.
Same here. For me, it's just firing some WSOP online circuit events over the next couple days, and then heading to the Venetian to play a big tournament this weekend. And kind of like Chad said, just keeping an eye on everything. Everything seems to be getting ramped up. And like I said earlier, predicting a big next couple months within the poker industry.
I also saw on your social media, Chad, that you were at the Poker Hose Bar.
Yes, Mr. Kroon.
Yeah, I was down there in Madison and decided to swing in to see if Poker Ho was there, and he was. And we had some fun. We did a little prop betting. He bet. I had 7 coins in my pocket, and behind the bar there was this metal bucket, and I was probably 15 20 feet away, and we bet a little money that I could sink one of them in, and I did. I debated whether I should, what the game theory move was, one at a time, or just take all 7 and try to get one in one shot. I went one at a time, and nailed it on the 3rd try. So that was cool. It's always fun. They got great burgers down there at Players Bar. There's a lot of history. There are pictures of Phil Hellmuth on the wall, because that's where he used to play before he struck it big in the World Series of Poker. And if you are from the Wisconsin poker community, it's just a must-visit place. So,
what's it called?
Players Bar.
The Players Bar. Makes so much sense. All right. Well, it sounds like the interview that we did with Daiva has just been completed. So more than likely you guys will hear from Daiva next week about her becoming an ambassador for GGPoker. And in the meantime, you guys stay warm, stay safe, keep your friends and family close if you're down here in the southeast of the United States. And if you're not, just enjoy your power, enjoy your water, enjoy all the little things. We appreciate you guys so much for listening, and be sure to get your BBO table immediately, because it's 35% off. Just saying. Deuces.
Run It Once is a brand new online poker site founded by poker superstar Phil Galfond, who has the player's experience at heart. Run It Once plans to make online poker fun and less predatory while providing ample rewards and innovative features at the same time. All new Run It Once players who download the software via PokerNews are entitled to a 100% deposit bonus worth up to €600. What makes this welcome bonus unique is that you can make as many deposits as you like for that first 30 days after your first deposit. This makes it perfect for those players who do not want to or cannot deposit $600 in one chunk. Be sure to check it out at once.run/PNpod. That's once.run/PNpod.